What is up, fight fans? I am Jason Burgos for Sherdog.com, and tonight I am joined by a man who once again turned back another youth movement in the middleweight division and stood tall at UFC Vegas 5 in the main event with a crushing knockout of a rising talent in Edmen Shahbazyan, and that is the new number 7 ranked middleweight in the UFC, and the still, from what I can tell a little bit, still very blonde, Derek Brunson. Mr. Brunson, sir, thanks for the time to look back at this big main event win.
Hey man, you got some good intros.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Coming from you, a veteran of your level, I appreciate that. Now, I have a ton of questions for you. I first wanted to get into like the betting odds part of this whole story, this whole fight story, to add some crazy context to those betting numbers for Shahbazyan, 22-year-old, only 4 fights in the UFC up until that point. You were a favorite in your fights with Machida, Anderson Silva, Robert Whittaker, Uriah Hall. But odds makers had him as a bigger favorite over you than they had you over Israel Adesanya, Jacques Souza, even Ian Heinisch, essentially saying either Edmen is better than all of those guys or you have gotten that much worse in a year or two. I know fighters often don't care about betting lines, but they do care about respect in the industry, and especially for someone that like yourself has proven themselves at this level. Did those numbers shock you, motivate you in some way, maybe put a big-ass chip on your shoulder and aim to prove their foolishness was just that?
Yeah, I'm a betting guy. I like to bet baseball, basketball, a little bit of MMA. I do a little bit of parlays. So yeah, I saw the minus 200. I was trying not to look whenever I logged into my site, but I saw it and I was like, man, this is just disrespectful, But I kind of put it in my mind and I was like, that don't matter. All this is opinions. It was just kind of on that train at the beginning. Like, it's just opinions. That's all that matters. It's how people bet their money. If people want to lose their money like that, so be it. But yeah, I had a chip on my shoulder, but I put the whole hype behind it and how people thought the fight was going to go and just focus on the fight.
I recently talked to Timothy Johnson on how he was a huge underdog against Terrell Fortune, a major prospect for Bellator, kind of like Shahbazyan is for the UFC. And he talked about it just seemed like people forgot the experience, the resume he had, and he felt was being used sort of like a tool to continue to build Terrell's name value. On some level, did you feel like the UFC was using you in the same kind of way and made this fight more about this new talent, this new star on the showcase? Or do you see it differently and feel they see you as an elite level talent in middleweight and wanted to give Edmen a bit of a heat check to see if he's more than hype?
Yeah, so I don't believe that. Actually, it don't. It's not really no such thing as somebody being used to a certain whatever, because we're all equal. Everybody have the same opportunities to train and go out there and win a fight and throw a punch. Yeah. So it is people that might look better on paper than the other people, so they might stylistically or how someone's fighting, they might be more prone to matching people up. But ultimately, the UFC, they was putting a lot behind this kid. I mean, he's going out here knocking people out. He looked like the next coming, People was talking about title run in the next couple fights, youngest champ, all this other stuff. And then you had a guy who's been around for a while and known to be a little reckless at times. It looks stylistically on paper for as a good matchup.
You mentioned a couple times in the post-fight interview that you pretty much closed yourself off to social media in the last week before the fight, which seems like a smart veteran move. But was that decision based on like a previous experience where negativity or even positivity put you in the wrong kind of headspace before fighting, and you knew the importance of this fight and you couldn't let anything distract you from it? Like, what made you want to just go off of social media for a full week like that?
Oh, absolutely. I lost my train of thought in the last thing that you asked. But yeah, it's funny. The UFC was like really, they were pumping him, so like thinking, he looked like the favorite on paper. So they say, if he wins, boom, we're going to cash in. We're going to even promote him even more. They were pumping a lot of my highlights. I look like a straight killer. They showed all of my highlights. It's never been done before, but now all of a sudden, I'm looking like a straight killer. They got all my knockouts being played, like whatever. So it's almost like the writing was on the wall. Killer versus killer. And it looked like he was going to walk away with the victory. So they were pumping it up. So, if he go out there and do what he's supposed to be doing, he was going to look like a complete animal because he just knocked off another animal, being all the highlights that they shown, So, it was definitely a lot of build-up. And when it comes to social media, yeah, I want to be in the right headspace. I didn't want any opinions. I wanted my coaching, my teammates, what they've been telling me for the 4 or 5 weeks, how I prepared for the fight to be the only thing that mattered in the fight. I didn't want to read any other opinions or how people thought the fight was going to go or who they thought was going to win. And I didn't check my text messages, my Instagram, my Twitter, my Facebook. I probably had over like 20,000 messages. You know, I had some friends commenting, man, hey, I just bet the house on you don't lose, you know? So I stopped reading texts after a while. I'm like, that's not my problem. That's your problem, you know? So
In 3 straight fights, you've pretty much upended like the hot streaks of fighters many people thought could be guys that were ready to enter like the upper echelon of the division. Those guys being Elias Theodorou, Ian Heinisch, and Edmen. Do you take any joy in putting a halt to those runs, especially when those are guys maybe getting more attention that you probably really deserve? You should be getting some of that attention. And also, is there an enjoyment of being able to turn away these young lions from elite status when people are starting to wonder, oh, will Father Time finally have an effect on Derek?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, the biggest thing is in this game is being able to compete against the youthful, new wave of athletes. Like the older guys, we know what they bring. There's a lot of video on those guys. I mean, if you look at Elias Theodorou, I was the underdog in my last 3 fights. Elias Theodorou was 17-2. The Ian Heinisch was, 13-1, 14-1, and this kid was 11-0. So my combined last 3 opponents had 4 losses combined and probably like 60-some wins, you know? So to go out there and get it done against that level of competition where these guys are going out here beating people, they're getting it done, they're knocking people off, they're stopping people who have a lot of hype behind them also. So yeah, it felt good in doing so.
When, you just turned 36 in January, you've been in the game over 10 years, 28 fights, and you've continued to be a top 10 talent for pretty much like the last 5 years. Simply, how do you maintain this high level so far into your career? And as Father Time becomes more of a serious opponent in your career, what lessons have you learned over the years that have become so huge now in maintaining your relevance at this level? How do you have this fountain of youth, Derek? Tell us all, please.
It's just all about, you got to get the right training partners, the right team. I mean, I live in North Carolina. MMA isn't so big, so I don't have a lot of training partners at home. So when I'm at home, not training for a fight, I'm drilling. Drilling is good for me. I'm not putting wear and tear on my body, and I'm actually getting better. I'm getting more skills I'm more tools in my toolbox. So that's good for a guy who's older. Also, when you go to camp, you have guys, that's when you got to step it up. You got guys hard sparring, but at the same time, you got guys that's going to crack you and then they're going to pull off. So you got to have a good team where guys aren't trying to like egotistically kill each other in the training room, trying to get each other better, making sure your strength and conditioning is up, taking care of your body, rest and recover, stretching, massages. All of that is a part of the game the older you get. And if you're able to do that right, then you can put you can go into your 40s with this fighting stuff. You just have to be really smart and take care of the body.
Now, you have been working, especially because we're talking about training camps, gyms, stuff like that. You've been working out of Sanford MMA for like the last few fights. I'm a big fan of Henri Hooft, and I've talked to a lot of guys over there, the Burns brothers, Linter Vassell, Ong Lan Sam, Martin Nguyen, Vitor, and they rave about his coaching style. You have worked with great coaches and majors in the past with Greg Jackson, Jack Swing, but in what ways has Henri been able to like maybe unlock some things on either a mental or physical level for you lately, and has working with that sick talent they have there been a particular part of like that keeping you in that fountain of youth like we just talked about?
Yeah, Greg Jackson is the best MMA coach of all time, like hands down. Like when it comes to X's and O's, the whole game, Greg Jackson, for sure. But striking, man, I haven't found anybody. Henri Hooft is, one of the best, if not the best striking coach in the game, as far as knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to treat people, know how to hold a team accountable, know how to train people, know how to game plan. Just being you can be a great coach and have good stuff, but if you don't know how to put it together, if you don't know how to treat people, if you don't know how to talk to people, you have to have the camaraderie and everybody kind of follow your suit. Everybody's cool in the gym. Everybody get along. Nobody's hating on each other. No one's egotistical, and it all starts at the top. Henry's a guy who sets the tone, and he has great athletes that he trained in the past that he can back it up. He trained and made UFC champions. He from Usman from the beginning. He made Usman a UFC champ. Usman went to him 0-0. Rashad, he worked with Rashad, Vitor, got Rumble and title fights. Got 2 teammates fighting each other, which isn't the most ideal thing, but that shows that you're doing a good job, you know. And we had like 4 top 10 170 pounders in the UFC, you know, in the same gym, you know. Yeah, it's a lot of people, and it starts at the top.
There are only a few clear-cut opponents, just in my opinion, of course, that makes sense and seem likely next. However, one in particular I haven't seen many people mention, and is a rematch I've wanted to see for a long time. A lot of people forget, but 6 years ago, you were likely beating Yoel Romero heading into that 3rd round of your fight with him. And he did what he's great at, and he pulled a shocking finish out of his ass like he seems to do, and he beat you. Now, 6 years later, this is a bigger fight. This would be a bigger fight than the headliner that night, which was Rockhold and Philippou. How much would a chance at revenge against Romero interest you, or is someone like Hermansson or Gaslam more the fight you would like next?
Yeah, Romero's, I think he's like, what? He's lost like 4 in a row or like 1 in 5, and he's a great fighter. You know, I'm looking for a guy with a lot more pop. You know, I'm looking at, you know, Whitaker and Cannonier already booked, so I can't go for them. Like, right. I need somebody that's going to really crack me into that top 5 and give me some recognition. You know, that 4th spot looks real lovely. So, like, Hermansson is like my main target. You know, I fought everybody. I want some fresh. I want some new, exciting matchups. You know, everybody needs to fight each other. You know, I don't even want to even. I fought Uriah Hall and I beat Uriah Hall. I fought I fought Romero. I was winning that fight. I lost to him. They're fighting each other. I'm not interested in either one of them. I beat one of them. I lost to one of them. I want like something fresh, something new, new challenges, and people who can do a lot for me. You know, I've made this division. Like, if it wasn't for me putting on crazy fights, Anderson Silva disappeared. Like, where would this division be? Like, nobody talks about that. Like, I came out there and put on crazy fights, whether, you know, it didn't go my way, but the Whitaker fight, I gave Whitaker his confidence. Like, he was so nervous and scared before that fight. I brought the fight to him, and after that fight, he's like, man, I can really fight. You know, I can whip through that. He said that, you know. So I put on even Israel. I risked it. I didn't have to fight Israel. I was scheduled to fight Antonio Carlos, but they needed that hype in that fight. I brought the hype in that fight. You know, that was his most hype fight. You know, I put myself out there, so I need to really get some good fights. You know, I've been in this division for a while. Like I said, take me out of the equation with the Whitaker fight. Take me out of the equation with the Israel fight. What does this division be with Anderson Silva taking a seat back? You know.
Speaking of Yoel, a few times in the post-fight interview, you mentioned interest in the belt his close boy Jorge Masvidal has in the BMF title. Now, considering Jorge is not a large welterweight, you aren't a small middleweight, you know, that fight seems unlikely from happening. Was your mentioning that you pushing for that belt to be just, you know, not just a one-division belt? Would you like to see a middleweight BMF title? And if you do, who do you want to see in that possible BMF title fight? It's got to be you. Who else would you want to see in that fight?
Whoever, yeah. I didn't know if it was I didn't know if it was one division. But yeah, I thought it was just like a whatever made sense, relative weight, whatever. But yeah, we got a BMF. Now, actually, we don't need to start with all these BMF belts. We just need one. And it should be able to go from heavyweight to 125, but it has to be guys within the close range so it can keep, you know what I mean? So it can like work its way up and down. But
So me and you are the same age. Now, I know the bleach blonde hair is back in vogue. All the cool kids are doing it. But there you go. Beautiful. But when I see your look, some folks, like from our group, may think Dennis Rodman. I myself think my man Wesley Snipes as Simon Phoenix in Demolition Man. So what is it, Derek? Are you just being on trend with the trendy hairdo? Or are you channeling back to when we were young bucks and it was about Rodman and Simon Phoenix?
Hey, Randleman, man, I'm just switching it up, man. I'm just switching it up.